right? So far we have talked about tariff, which are indirect tax on imported goods. Then we have talked about customs and duties, which are additional taxes on imported products on top of tariffs. Then quota is a limit on the quantity, which restricts imports, right? What else, right? Exactly. Red tape. Red tape is basically when you make the process very strict and very, cumbersome, right? So what it basically means, red tape is using extensive paperwork, right? Right? Involving extensive or unnecessary paperwork, documentation, as we say, to make it difficult for the people to import or businesses to import, involving extensive paperwork or documentation to discourage people and unnecessary processes to make it difficult for importers to difficult for businesses and people to import. Businesses and individuals to import. Easy. We're good on this, students, right? Okay, now let's keep moving forward, right? Another thing that's used as a trade barrier is embargo. Embargo is what? Embargo is a complete ban on a certain product, right? So for instance, Pakistan can impose embargo on, so usually it's imposed on products that are kind of illegal or dangerous, or those are against the culture of a country, right? So Pakistan might impose embargo on things like weapons, right? Not from all countries, but from certain countries, embargo, right? Or some dangerous nuclear instruments, equipment, and anything, so that just to control that, right? Then another thing, Mubin, which you rightly said, non-tariff barrier, non-tariff barrier. So this is also a non-tariff barrier, right? Because it's not affecting the price, it's not affecting the quantity, right? But it's making it difficult for importers to import. Then obviously the more difficult the process is, the lesser the companies that will be able to comply, and therefore there will be lower imports overall. Another non-tariff barrier is product standards. If you remember, I told you that for in European Union, a lot of Asian products cannot penetrate because of the fact that they have to comply with certain product standards, right? Now, when that happens, right, so that is also a way of discouraging your um, imports, right? Right? So product standards, you say that the products that are imported from XYZ countries, they're not meeting our standards. Those are substandard products, and those would affect the hygiene of our, health or whatever, right, of our consumers, and therefore we can't allow these to be imported and so on, right? So product standards. Is everyone getting this? Any confusion so far, right? And now comes in export subsidies. Now, what are export subsidies, students, right? So export subsidies are when a country gives subsidies to its exporters. And why would it do that? That is what we're about to explain, and that is what's being asked in the question, right? So if any one of you could not read the question, let me quickly show you the question again, right? So export subsidies. Okay, now this is the question we are doing here, right? Explain using examples what is meant by protectionism and show with the help of a diagram how export subsidies can be considered as a form of protectionism, right? First of all, you'll explain export subsidies as subsidies provided to your exporters. Why? To make your products artificially competitive. To make the locally produced goods artificially competitive, you provide subsidies. Because what does a subsidy actually do? Have a look at this. Subsidy reduces your cost of production, which in turn reduces your price. Are you getting me, right? So have a look at this, students. So you have price of a product on the y-axis, you have your price of a good on the y-axis, you have quantity of that good on the x-axis, Now let's assume initially the equilibrium in the market was where the demand and supply were equal, right? Upward sloping was your product supply and downward sloping was your product demand. Now where the two intersect, that is the equilibrium point, yes or no? That shows you equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Okay. If government wants to reduce the price of this good, right? Government will provide subsidies, which are financial payments to producers, and therefore, as a result of it, your cost of production decreases. When the cost of production of a business decreases, that causes a rightward shift in its supply. So supply curve will shift from S1 to S2, and now the new equilibrium would be where this new supply curves intersects with your demand at this point, and so you can see that equilibrium price will be lower and equilibrium quantity would be higher. Any confusion, right? So this is how a normal subsidy works. But when we talk about export subsidies are only provided, as the word suggests, export subsidies are only provided on what? Goods that are exported, right? Because you want to boost your exports artificially. This is an artificial method, right? I mean, you can't sustain subsidies for very long. We did talk about that, yeah? Yesterday as well, we were talking about why subsidies are costly for a business, sorry, for a country. So subsidies are costly for a country because it's coming from finance money, it's coming from tax money, which is a burden on the taxpayers, right? Horizontal curve to show the supply of imports. We are coming to that. I haven't made the graph yet. This was just a normal graph that I explained, right? You're right. Now, the question said, with the help of a diagram, show how export subsidies will help a country with protectionism. I repeat, with the help of a diagram, show how export subsidies will help a country with protectionism. Like, how will it help a country reduce imports and boost exports? Because that's what protectionism is. You're trying to restrict imports, but trying to also, on the other hand, trying to boost your exports, right? So that your balance of payments is in favorable position. Okay. Now, students, I'm about to make this graph and you have to look at this very carefully, right? So let's assume a good, right? So let's say cars, right? So this is the market for cars in Pakistan. So let's say this is the demand for cars, right? A certain type of car. And this is the supply, Toyota or whatever basic type variant of a car. And this is the local supply, right? Now this is, I'm writing that as S local, right? So basically local supply. I mean, you can, write any notation as long as you explain in your exam or the diagram that what SL stands for. So that would be local supply of cars, right? Whatever that good is, we are assuming it to be cars in this case, right? And DL to be the local demand. How much cars are being produced in Pakistan? This is represented by SL. And how many cars are demanded in Pakistan? That's calculated through DL, right? Local demand. Any confusion so far? Now, let's say that at the moment, right, the equilibrium price of locally produced cars is this much, right? So where the demand and supply intersect, that's what the equilibrium price is, right? Okay. Is this good, right? So let's say I'm just removing this. You can write it somewhere else, but do mention your labeling on the exam. That helps examiner understand what you mean when you write something, right? So let's assume that a car in Pakistan costs 1 million rupee, right? So that means 10 lakh rupees, right? 1 million rupees, right? 10 lakh rupees, right? Okay. Now, if this is the price in the local market, now, why would anyone want to import cars? Listen to me carefully. Based on local supply for the good and local demand for the good, equilibrium price in the market will be determined. Any confusion so far? We're good on this, right? 1 million, right? Now, if someone is importing a car in your country or any product, what does it mean? That whether the price of imported good is cheaper or higher? Why would anyone want to import something? Why would they not buy locally? That's my question, right? Why would they not want to import? Why would they want to import and not buy locally? Because exactly imported is cheaper. Do you get this point, right? So the only reason why anyone would want to import a product is because imported is cheaper. I mean, quality is another thing, but I mean, let's keep to the basics that it's cheaper. So if your imported car, the same type of imported car, costs only 0.8 million, right? So that means it's cheaper compared to locally produced good. Do you agree with me? Customer loyalty, yeah. But I mean, the very basic that we're looking at is the that thing, right? That's the price. Okay. Is everyone clear on this? So have a look at this. So since your imported is cheaper, right? Therefore, people would want to buy imported product and not buy local good. Easy. Okay. Now, if the price of imported cars is 0.8 million, less than what's being, less than the price in the local market, right? Have a look at this. Where this is world supply, right? This is what WS, world supply. And why is it a straight horizontal line? Let me tell you. So since there are so many countries from which you can import, whenever we show world supply, we always make it perfectly elastic, right? What does elasticity means? Supply elasticity. When we make supply like this, it means perfectly elastic. And what it actually shows that, right, there is a lot of supply for that thing. There's a lot of supply. When there's a lot of supply for something, we call it perfectly elastic supply. Do you agree with me? We're talking about supply, not demand. Be careful, right? So on the y-axis, you have just like normal price for the good. On the x-axis, you have quantity supply. Students, are you following me? Now, when the supply is a straight horizontal line, it's called perfectly elastic supply, which means that there's so much quantity available that at any price, you can buy whatever quantity you can, supply at this price, you can supply whatever quantity you want to, right? There's a lot of production taking place, right? 100 units, 200 units. So supply is increasing, but the price is staying fixed. That's what perfectly elastic supply shows. Easy? Any confusion so far? Students, is everyone clear on this? That's why the world supply is perfectly elastic, right? That's what you need to know. Okay, world supply, like countries supplying this car, this product to your country. Now, where the world supply intersects with your demand, that would be the quantity demanded in your market. Are you getting me? So where the world supply intersects with your local demand, that's the quantity that's being demanded in your economy. Do you agree with me? Okay. So let's say during 1 year, 5 million cars are being demanded in our country. And where this world supply intersects with supply, that is the quantity that will be produced in your local market. Yes or no? Now think about this. Let me tell you again. When imported goods are cheaper, what would people do? People would buy imported goods, right? Till the point where, right, they will buy imported goods till the point where imported goods are cheaper, right? And right, is this making sense? Okay. Now, this is the local demand where world supply intersects with demand curve, and this is the local supply where world price intersects with local supply. So basically, your country is importing, currently importing how many cars? Every year, your country is importing 2 million cars. Yes or no? Easy. So 2 million are your imports, right? Okay, now the government is not fine or comfortable with this. Government doesn't like this. Government says, oh, we are losing a lot of foreign exchange by importing cars. Export revenue. Is this export, Zohan? Import expenditure. Yeah. So yeah, that's correct. So this rectangle here, the area of this rectangle, right, represents your import expenditure. So this is how much you're spending. Each car is worth how much? 0.8 million. And how much quantity you are importing? 2 million, right? So you just multiply these two, right? So it would be 1.6 million, right? So $1.6 million is the total amount spent on imports. Yeah, that's correct. Is everyone clear on this? Right? We good on this? Right? Okay, so let's keep moving forward. Okay, now think about this. Why is local government not liking it? Why is your country not liking it? Because you're spending a lot of foreign exchange on importing cars. So the government of your country wants to replace imports with what? With your local produced goods. Your country wants to replace imports with locally produced goods, but your country also knows, you also know that your locally manufactured goods are expensive. So to boost or to promote your goods, what you will do, the government will start giving subsidies to local car manufacturers. I repeat, knowing the fact that your local cars are less competitive compared to imported cars, and that's the reason why your local consumers are buying imported goods, the your country government would want to promote locally produced goods, and therefore to make your locally produced goods more competitive, they will start providing subsidies. They'll start providing subsidies, right? Which means that the local supply will shift to the right. The local supply increases or it will shift to the right. Any confusion so far, students? Is this making sense? Is everyone clear on this? Okay. Now, with your locally local supply increasing from SL to S2, now the price of your locally produced goods have decreased. So now it's somewhat less than, may I request everyone to put themselves on mute. So now that has come down to, right, let's say 0.9. It's still higher than imported good, but not as much higher as much it was previously. Now, how much are the new level of imports? How much are the new level of imports? Now think about this. Now, this is your new equilibrium point. This was your original equilibrium point in the local market. This is your new equilibrium point in the local market, right? Now, the world supply is intersecting demand at the same level, 5 million. But how much are your locally produced goods? So your locally produced goods are, let's say, 4.5 million. So locally produced is 4.5 million. Total demand is 5 million. So it means that out of 5 million, 4.5 is produced locally, and the remaining 0.5 is remaining 0.5 million are being imported. Yes or no? Remaining 0.5 million is imported. Any confusion so far, students? Is it making sense? Is it making sense or not? Right? So, right? So this is how through your export subsidies, you will reduce the quantity of imports. Right? Is it making sense? Any confusion? Anything that's not clear? We good? Right? Okay. Can we move forward? Right? So this is, you will not only draw the graph, you will also explain it in words that when the government provided subsidy, the cost of production decreased and the local supply shifted to the right, as we have shown in the graph, which made locally produced goods relatively more competitive as before. Which made locally manufactured goods more competitive than before. And now, therefore, the quantity of imports will be reduced. Let me ask you another question. Now, let's make this a little interesting. If the government would have if the government would have provided subsidies, not by this level, but by this level. So my question is, if the government would have provided subsidies as much as that the supply curve would have shifted to this extent. Now, my question to you here is that then how much will be the quantity of goods imported? If the supply have shifted by this much from SL to S2, then how much will be the quantity of imports, right? Then there will be zero imports. Why? Because, excellent, right? The new supply curve is intersecting with the local demand at exactly the same price where the world supply is, which means that now your locally produced goods are as competitive as much of foreign goods, and therefore there's no incentive for local consumers to buy foreign goods. Zero, technically. Yes, correct. Right? Very nice. Excellent. We're good. Okay. Now, students, this being done, let's move to the next part. Okay. Now, discuss the arguments that are used to justify protectionism and consider whether these arguments can ever be justified. So the question says that what are the arguments that economists or other people give to justify that there should be protectionism, and whether these arguments are justified or not? That's the question here, right? Right. We are coming to that, right, Zon? So what are some popular arguments that people give that why they are using trade barriers or protectionism, right? So one very commonly used is dumping, right? Dumping is a little complicated, so I'll explain you a little later, right? The most commonly used argument in favor of dumping is sunrise industries, right? Sunrise industries, right? So sunrise industries or infant industries, as we say, are the newly emerging or establishing industries in a country. And you don't want these industries to be exposed to foreign competition. I repeat. So sunrise industries or infant industries are newly emerging industries in a country, and you don't want these to be exposed to foreign competition. Right, right. Question 8. So what are you saying? Uh, Counter argument can be that this can be called right. Yeah, I mean, it would be too much unfair. You won't really say dumping. This is not dumping as per the very definition. Previous, you won't use the word dumping in the previous question, but you can definitely say that, yeah, if a government is providing such subsidies to so much extent that your imports are literally zero, then obviously that's something that's very unfair for the country, for the other countries, and therefore they will do the same against your products. Yes or no? This is simple, right? Okay. Now, what are some of the arguments that are popular arguments that are used in favor of dumping, right? So the first one is sunrise industries. To protect your sunrise industries or your infant industries. What's those, right? So newly establishing industries. Let me give you an example here, right? So let's say India. Let's take India as an example. Recently, India has started its own Tata cars, right? Its own brand of cars. Now, if India continues to import cars from other parts of the world like Japan, Germany, USA, Europe, UK, and so on, right? Now, the problem with all of this is that the Tata cars being a new brand, they are not that efficient. They have not achieved economies of scale. Do you know what economies of scale are? So therefore, Tata cars cannot be as good or as cheap as much the foreign players are, as much as Japanese cars are, or German cars are, or British cars are, right? So therefore, Indian cars will be at a disadvantage if India lets imported goods, cheaper imported cars come into their country. Therefore, what will they do, right? What will they do? That they will impose protectionism tools and tariffs and all these things, right? Is everyone getting this? So to protect your newly emerging industries, you use trade barriers. And what's the reason? So the argument is that, you have to protect your local company, you have to protect your local employment. In fact, local employment is a separate point. So a lot of times countries give this argument that if they don't restrict imports, then imported goods would mean that your local employment is being affected. How so? Let me tell you. If Pakistan manufactures textiles and we are also importing clothes and textiles from other countries, then obviously lesser people will be buying local goods. If lesser people are buying local goods, local textiles, that means what? That means lower demand for them. And therefore, that's something harmful for our country. So we don't want that, right? So local employment, protecting local employment is another uh, argument for that, right? Then another thing, yes, Zohan, strategic industries. So sometimes the argument used in favor of protectionism is to protect or to, safeguard your strategic industries. Now, what are some strategic industries? So strategic industries could be, let's say, if Pakistan is, which it is, if Pakistan is an agriculture based economy and, still a big chunk of our population lives in rural areas, and they're connected with, agriculture and all. So to protect the livelihood of our farmers, to protect the, stable incomes of our farmers, right? The country might not allow import of agricultural goods. Are you getting me, right? Because if obviously local people start buying imported agricultural products, then they will not buy local, and therefore, if they don't buy local, local farmers have no other skills. They don't have any other, any other source of income. Then they go out of business, which is very dangerous and harmful, and so on, right? So to protect strategic industry. Similarly, sometimes countries don't rely on imports for things like weapons. Sometimes they have to rely because, I mean, you can't produce everything on your own, but sometimes they don't do that because, that's another strategic industries for them, and they want to produce their own ammunition or their own weapons, right? And so on, right? Because if you buy weapons from other countries, you might know that they can somehow, influence you later on, right? So all the F-16s plane that we have bought from USA, they have a way to control those planes even later on when we have bought those. And only they can update those planes and not us, and so on. I mean, there's a lot of complications and so on, right? So if now Pakistan is producing its own fighter jet, which you might know, JF-17 Thunder, then we have all the autonomy, we have all the um, you know ability to modify those, and so on and so forth. Is this making sense, students? Any confusion so far? Then another argument used in favor of protectionism is dumping. Now, the first thing I want to clarify, right? This is an important term, and it's important that we understand its definition. Dumping is when a country, dumping is when a country sells a product at price lower than its cost of production. Just a second. Lower than its cost of production. Just a second. So what is dumping? Dumping is when a country sells a product at a price, just give me a second, lower than its cost of production, or at a price less than the price it charges it's in its local economy, or at a price lower than the price it charges in local economy. Lower than the price it charges in local economy. Okay, now think about this. If Pakistan accuse any other country of dumping, then what do we mean? We basically mean that if, let's say, China, we say China is dumping its solar panels in Pakistan, what we mean that, China is selling that good at price which is even lower than the cost of production. Like if it cost 5 lakh to produce a solar panel and they're selling it for 4 lakh rupees in Pakistan, then that is what dumping is. Or if they sell it for 6 lakh rupees in China and they're selling it for less than 6 lakh rupees in Pakistan, then that is dumping. Right, underdeveloped countries. Yeah, Abdullah, that's correct. This would be exploiting local labor. That's correct, right? When a country sells their product below the cost, right? Exactly, correct, right? So there are two things. They have to sell the good more than the price that they're selling in the local economy, right? And obviously, definitely more than the cost of production. So if any country sells a product in another country lower than the cost of producing that thing, then that is dumping. Does it make sense? Any confusion so far, right? Now, what's the purpose or motivation behind dumping? That in the short run, obviously the country that is dumping will be facing losses and all that and so on. But in the longer run, they will be able to destroy the local competition, right? So any company that is producing solar panels in Pakistan will not be able to compete with Chinese products, and therefore they will be forced to leave the market, and therefore in the longer run it will be only China exporting that to Pakistan. To process that, if Pakistan exchange rate appreciates, China will increase their price of exports too, so the Pakistan can't benefit from appreciation. I mean, there would be a word, Zohan, but I don't know. I mean, whatever you have written in the comment, that makes sense. That if Pakistan, yeah, our exchange rate has appreciated, but the price has also increased, right? Right. So, to be honest, I don't know exactly what's that called, right? What's the word or the term that we use for that? Okay. Now, students, think about this. Out of all the arguments, now you have to listen to this carefully. We are trying to wrap this up. Out of all the arguments that are provided in favor of protectionism, it's only the dumping argument that is justified. Justified by whom? World Trade Organization, I told you, right? So World Trade Organization is the supreme authority that regulates international trade, right? So World Trade Organization is the supreme authority that regulates international trade, and it also has a dispute system, dispute resolution system. What does it mean? That if Pakistan accuses China or any other country for dumping or some other thing regarding international trade, then this case will be taken to World Trade Organization, and that will decide whether Pakistan is justified or the other country is justified, and so on, right? Okay, you can just Google it after the class, right? Now, coming back to the point, out of all the arguments that are provided in favor of dumping, in favor of protectionism, it's only the dumping argument that is justified according to World Trade Organization. Why so? Because it kind of makes sense that this is complete exploitation. What is this? This is complete exploitation, right, of a country that is exporting to your country, right? So if China is accused of dumping and they're proven to be, if they are proved, if that's also proved that they're dumping, then Pakistan would be justified in restricting that product or in stopping that product and imposing trade barriers. But otherwise, if Pakistan restricts any imports on the basis of sunrise industries or to protect local employment or strategic industries, none of these arguments are justified by World Trade Organization, right? Because why so? They will say that if you do it against other countries' products, then they will do it against your products. So if Pakistan starts using trade barriers against Indian and Bangladeshi and European and American products, then they will do the same for our products, and overall the purpose of international trade will be killed. The benefits that we have been talking about again and again of international trade, like it promotes competition, it promotes specialization, it promotes creativity, it promotes innovations. All those benefits that we talk about again and again will be vanished. Right, exchange controls. Exactly. Exchange control is another trade barrier which basically limits how much currency you can exchange. So exchange control is another, protectionism tool in which you limit how much foreign currency you can buy with your local currency. So when there's a limit on exchange,